Okay, and if your mind is not ready, if your mind is not mature, then even after so-called leaving everything, you will what? Continue to distort things, right? In every situation, even in a teaching situation, you can what? It can become a means for you to get your fame. It can become a means for you to get what? All the nourishment that you have missed out in life. It can become a means for you to make money, right? So therefore, because where is it coming from? It comes from that unsatisfied, unprepared mind when it prematurely takes up a thing and leaves everything else. Yeah. Is it a live stream now? Chal raha hai na? Right? So therefore, these are the kind of distortions which start coming. So what Lord Krishna is saying is, it's much better to stay where you are, do what you have to do, okay, but do it with a different attitude. Before, when you were engaging in the world, what was your vision? Your vision was very narrow. What was your vision? How can I grab the maximum possible for my benefit? That was the only thing. Okay? How can I manipulate the world to my advantage? Okay? So you try sometimes very aggressive means, sometimes subtle means to manipulate everything. Okay? And that way, what is wrong with that way? Tell me, what is wrong with that way? First of all, exactly, as Rupa says, it's highly selfish, right? You are just concentrating this whole big world, you are just concentrating on your little needs and what? Just maximizing your benefits. Okay? And in the process, how much damage you do to everybody around you, you are totally oblivious to. Either you are oblivious to that or you justify. Okay? Everybody is like that. Okay? So that means you become greedy. Now the second biggest problem is that unfortunately you are not always successful in manipulating everything according to your needs. Right? Are you always successful in getting everything that you want? No. So in that case, what are the other problems that exist? Unhappiness, dissatisfaction, anger, feeling like a victim, right, or feeling like a failure. These are all the added baggages, right? So therefore, please understand, Gita does not tell you not to engage in the world or to be detached from the world. It says if you engage in the world with your own narrow perspective, these are all the problems. They are unavoidable. Exactly. Right? It's just showing you that. It is not giving an advice. It's just showing, and everybody can identify with that. Who can say, I'm free from all of this? Nobody can say totally. Right? So therefore, it says, then how do you engage in the same activity without all carrying this baggage? This is what we call Karma Yoga. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Today, okay, this we have done up to now, up to 8, 9 we have done, right? So chapter 5. Okay, so therefore, Karma Yoga helps us to engage in the activity, but it says what? You don't do it with this attitude of grabbing. You do it, you take this world as a platform where you can grow. So that means when things don't happen your way, what is our normal reaction? Anger, blaming others, blaming ourselves. You relook at the whole thing and try to correct all these assumptions that you have, right? And make them in keeping with realities. Okay? So this is the whole process, and it takes a long time. Okay? So that means a Karma Yogi, what is the Karma Yogi doing? Is continuing to engage in the world, continuing to pursue moksha through studying the Shastra, but the purpose of one's interaction is with the world is to gain maturity that is required to gain the knowledge. Okay? Because like every knowledge, you need preparation. If you want to study PhD in physics, can you just say that, oh, now I'm a little child and I will study PhD in physics? No, you need preparation. What is a preparation? You need to go to primary school, you need to go to secondary school, you need to undergraduate, graduate studies, and then PhD. For Vedanta also, a mind which is afflicted with all these problems is just unable to comprehend the reality about oneself, because it's too narrow a mind, a too distorting mind with totally wrong understanding of everything. That mind is just, Vedanta seems like a fairy tale, right? It seems so removed, and that is the experience of everyone. Like Nirmala very nicely she was saying, my God, what Vedanta says that you are Brahman seems like a completely, like a Maya. It doesn't seem like this is Maya, right? So this is exactly it. This is why, many times people come to Gita class and come to Vedanta class until the time that you talk dharma. How to be a better human being, how to have proper values, because that they can identify with. The minute you start talking about you being Brahman and Ishvara and you, there is an identity, they said, now what is all this? It's like a fairy tale. Like somebody said, it's like a science fiction. You're just creating some imaginary world, right? So that means that the person is taking this reality as so real, is not even willing to examine that all the notions and all the conclusions that I have about myself, about the world, about the nature of reality, are they valid or not? The mind is not available because it's so convinced about the truth of this reality. Okay? It is like a frog in a well. A frog in a well thinks that the whole universe is what? The well.
He comes out of it.
Absolutely. Now he thinks, now he wants solution, and he wants to say, now this is my universe and I want to deal better with the universe. Somebody says, hey, your first starting point is wrong, because what you have defined as the universe is actually one little tiny little thing in the whole universe. Okay, so tells the frog, come, I will show you first what the universe is. Okay? The minute the frog is taken out of the well, and the frog is so used to that well, okay, frog is frightened. It wants to go back to the familiar ground, because that's the only universe that he or she, that frog had defined. Vedanta is like that. Okay? The minute you are given a bigger vision about who you are, it's frightening. Because it's so different from what you think you are and the years and janmas with which you have lived with this vision. It's not just one janma. It's an orientation of many janma, countless janma. Okay? So this is why, in fact, even Einstein said many times that generally when you are caught in a problem, okay, you look for solution within what? The same paradigm. And he says that within that paradigm actually there is no solution, because you are confused, right? The only way to solve that problem is come out of it and see it from a different standpoint, and in there lies the solution. Then you don't ignore this part, but you put it in perspective. Okay? So karma yoga helps you to prepare this mind for this knowledge. It's gradual process. Even though this is reality about you, for you to own up to that reality, right, it takes a long time. Okay? What do you need to do? You need to do two things. One is keep on listening to this reality that Shastra is talking about. Okay? And when Shastra is talking about, it doesn't just say, oh, you're Brahman, you're limitless, you're this, you're that. It actually has a methodology to communicate how it is so. So the minute you keep on listening to this methodology, it becomes clearer and clearer. It's not just a repetition of the final statement, but it is the whole process of listening to Shastra which gives you the clarity. Okay? Certain logics which were not very clear will start becoming clearer. Certain analysis which seemed like a far off analysis will start making sense. Okay? So that is one process, which is listening to Shastra and reflecting on Shastra. The second process is your personal growth. How are you dealing with your sadness? How are you dealing with your anger? How are you dealing with your fears? How are you dealing with all kinds of feelings that you have of persecution in this world? You need to take care of that psychological growth, personal growth. Okay? And then one day this vision will become crystal clear, and not only it will become crystal clear, you'll be able to live it. Okay? There will not be a dichotomy between what you understand and how you are when you interact with the world. There is a complete assimilation. Okay? And it's a lifetime process. Okay? And therefore, but one has to be sincere. Any learning requires commitment, right? And a learning of this magnitude requires a lot of commitment. It's not an easy process. Okay? So therefore, Karma Yogi starts the journey of both listening to Shastra and taking care of one's personal growth. Okay? Now, the next, and this is what Lord Krishna says is a safer way. So don't be in a hurry to take sannyasa. Okay? And he also says that actually a gnani is the one, we saw the last verse, Pashyan Shrunvan, while acting, okay, while seeing, while eating, while interacting with the world, he understands that awareness, Atma, is never performing any action while doing it. So that means even ultimately when you have understood, it is not necessary that you take sannyasa. Just before we go to the next verse, which is talking about meditation and the purpose of meditation, I want to highlight one thing to balance this whole thing. Okay? And that is, if Karma Yoga is better, then why sannyasa lifestyle?
It's just become a habit for whatever is natural.
No. Sannyasa also has a place in Vedic tradition, right? So it's not saying that sannyasa is bad, because the Vedic view respects sannyasa. It respects a person who has given up everything else for this knowledge. That's a beautiful thing. A sannyasa ritual is when you go, I've seen it hundreds of times. In fact, the people with whom I have studied, 90% of them are sannyasis. Okay? Our teacher takes them to the Ganga, and these people who are like me, right? They pray to Goddess Ganga and to the sun and to the sky and to all gods in the universe, and they declare that I don't want anything else in the world than this knowledge about myself, knowledge of the truth, knowledge of the reality. Okay? And I am, through this ritual today, giving up officially all my other responsibilities. Okay? Then this person walks off. The teacher says, that is considered to be a very evolved person. Okay? Then the teacher says, yes, but that pursuit of the truth requires two things. It requires for you to reflect on the reality and be with the Shastra. The minute what happens is you give up Shastra, your mind is a fertile ground for imagination. You will do what? You will create your own theories. You will create your own vision of the world, and it will take you on a tangent. Okay? So that means Shastra is a balance. It's like, when a train is derailed, you bring it back on track. Shastra is the one which gives you the right perspective so that you don't start creating your own imagination in the name of spirituality. So many spiritual people are just wasting the time with energies and, wanting to rise something, and, they are all off track.
Isn't it shirking the responsibility?
And shirking the responsibilities and all that. So they said, hey, put proper perspective. No, sannyasis no. So I want to show. So therefore, as a sannyasi, you have to do few things. One is you have to study. Okay. The second thing that you have to do, which is a very important thing, and that is to teach. Because whatever you have learned, right, you have to share with others. Why? Because people are equally stuck. We are all frogs in well. We have our reality and we are stuck in that reality, and we are looking for solution. Okay? Who is the person who is going to teach them? The teacher, right? So they have a very big responsibility of sharing. If I am spending so much time learning something because I've given up other responsibilities, right? I'm making myself available for what? This teaching. Teachers play a very important role. Guru occupies a very important place, provided that Guru is a proper Guru. Right? So they are not just, please don't walk away with thinking that sannyasis are all just people who are abusing. That's not what it is. If they take it prematurely, then this is the problem. Very refined, very nuanced, right? Otherwise, our mind is such, we either say, oh, sannyasi is the best, or they are useless. We go from one extreme to the other. We are bipolar in our ways of thinking. We have to make it far more refined, and we have to understand the important role that a wise person who has studied Shastra is playing in the society. It's not an ordinary role. They are like modern time consultants, right? You are running a company and you are stuck. Who are you calling? Somebody from outside who is able to see the situation from a much broader perspective, right? And is helping you to solve, because you are caught in that given paradigm. Really, they are like that. They are higher than McKinsey because why? The company has some profit problem and all. Here it is your life. You are stuck. Everybody is stuck in their life. They don't know where else, what more. And then there is this whole big vision. And the person, if one aligns one's whole vision of life to Vedanta, I tell you, you can be doing anything, but you can be extremely responsible, extremely dynamic, enthusiastic, but totally free. That is what a spiritual person is. Okay? So therefore, this teacher, this guru helps, because the person doesn't have any other roles. Imagine if you have studied Shastra but you have thousands of things to do in a day. How much time do you have left to share this vision? Okay? So therefore, in our previous time, Vedic times, there were rishis. They were married. Right? It's not that they were not married, but they lived where? They lived away, a little bit away, in a forest. Okay? The kings sent their children to those rishis, to these wise people. The princes stayed very simply in a home of a wise person, a scholar. And the prince, what did they do? They helped in the chores, running the home of a rishi. Okay? They were imparted with all the necessary values, proper vision, okay, how to live life and how to govern the kingdom. That is a huge responsibility. Running a kingdom is a huge responsibility. You need preparation for that. The rishis prepared those prince boys with a proper perspective. Now, our politicians, what perspective they have? What perspective of life they have? Yeah, exactly. In this few years of power and position, how can I benefit generations? Not only for me, but generations. Accumulate for generations. you need people. Anything, any role that you assume in this world is a huge responsibility. Being a leader is a big responsibility. What the leader understands about oneself and about one's role in the scheme of things matters a lot. Even as mothers, right? What you do to your children matters a lot. What kind of values you give, what kind of infrastructure of thinking you give. Okay? It's not telling them what they should do or what they should not do. Developing their capacity to think and make proper decisions. That is what, if you're a good parent, you will do. Proper perspectives, incorporating different variables, being alive to certain realities. This is what one has to teach, not tell them what they should do. Okay? You make them good decision makers. You don't make decisions for them. Okay? So that means for all of this you need a proper perspective, and that sannyasi who is a guru is doing this job. It's a huge job in the society. It's a very big job. This is why then when those princes became kings, then what happened? They cared for, many of them did care for their subjects. Okay? At times when they were confused as to what should be done, what is the right thing to do, where would they go? They would go back to that guru, if not that guru, to some other guru, right? And when the king comes and sees that guru, who does namaskara to whom? King to the guru. He is the top, he is the leader. To whom does he does namaskara? To that guru. Why? Because knowledge is valued in the society. Think about a society where knowledge is the highest. That is an amazing society. It's a different kind of a society. Now re-look at how we have defined success. What is the modern view of success? Money. Money, power. Okay? Modern view of success is, what is your bank account? Right? And nobody knows what your bank account is, but it is inferred through what? Exactly. Where you live, what school you go to, what kind of business you do, what kind of car you drive. The whole perception of success is what? This money and money related objects that you possess. That's why when you meet somebody, okay, you hardly even try to know the person. What happens? You try to gauge the person as to which strata that person belongs. If the person meets your standard, then you engage in the conversation. The minute you feel that this person is below, what will you do? You lose interest. Okay? And if you think that the person is above in your perception, what happens? You try to woo the person. You try to be with this person, around that person. Okay? So this is how we have created societies where the very success, the definition of success is so superficial and so faulty. And people who don't have all the things, you're in a party and you feel that the other person has lost interest in you because you don't have all these things, how does it make you feel? Small and insignificant. Now, how many people have what everybody wants to have? 1%. 1% in the whole, 5% in the whole world. So 95% of the people, how are they feeling living in this world? Small, inferior, dissatisfied. This is the result of the false perception. Well, we can say, oh, so what's wrong with false perception? False perception leads to misery. That's why you need to correct it. Otherwise, why should you correct your false perception? You need to rethink. You need to re-examine. Okay? And this whole process about what you believe, your belief systems, your value systems in life, they are so integral part of you. And you have to change that. Okay, so therefore there is this Vedic vision where knowledge is what occupies the highest place, not the physical wealth, right? And therefore that sannyasi who is exclusively pursuing knowledge has a role to play, a very strategic role to play in the society, in giving right perspective to everyone who's doing whatever. Because with right perspective, if you do things, then what? You become a contributor. Otherwise, you are what? Just a consumer. The world is given to you in a way that how much do you consume? Small thing like my drinking from this bottle of water, how many people have worked to make it possible? How many people? The person who works in a plastic factory, then
Delivery boy.
the delivery boy who delivers, then
The printer for the labor.
the printer for the labor, somebody who fetches the water, gets it from the river,
The maid who brings it to
the maid who brings it. Imagine, right? Then you include the forces, right? How does the river exactly? Nature contributes. That means the whole universe is working very hard to satisfy a simple need of yours, which is what? Seems like a totally simple need of mine, drinking water from bottle of water. Okay? And what is, you have no gratitude for that. You take it totally for granted. You don't even think about it. Okay? And where is your attention? This little, this contract that I don't have, I absolutely have to get it. This I absolutely, next BMW latest model, I absolutely have to have it. Okay? So that means grabbing and grabbing and grabbing. Where is the gratitude here? Where is the gratitude for everything that is working and constantly to satisfy every whim and fancy of yours? Okay? So therefore you have to change your perception. This is realities. It is nothing to do with being a good person. It's just being alive to realities. Okay? If I am getting, now imagine you shift your vision. And you shift your vision and say, my God, so many forces are working constantly to satisfy so many of my needs. Now, what is my response? Then what is going to be your attitude? The attitude of gratitude. You don't forget to thank all the forces. You have to. Okay? And secondly, then if you have feeling of gratitude, what is going to be your next step? What is then, if I'm receiving so much from the world, what is my responsibility to give back? This is how you grow as a human being. Okay? What can I do? Okay? That means it's a very significant shift from being a consumer to be a contributor. That shift is a huge shift. Every karma yogi has to undergo that shift. Becoming a contributor. Okay? Doing what can I do? And this is, today I'm privileged to have him because I spent time with him. Okay? I have lunch with him. And he tells me about his father. And when he talks about his father, tears come out of my eyes. Okay? Because he tells me that his father used to not just, write checks. He used to go to places and he would ask them, what is it that you need? Women, for example, they did not have, he saw some women walking, and to take water and all. He says, what do you need? He says, yeah, we have to go so far to fetch water. He says, now let me go, let me give you something to build wealth in your village. Then he will go after a few days and he will make sure that it is done. Right? He would walk on Marine Drive, and whoever is some people who are shivering and all, he would give his own jacket. Okay? Number of instances that he tells me, it is just, I cannot believe a man like that can exist. That is an extremely evolved human being. Extremely evolved human being. Okay? And he used to tell me that, when he was doing business and he always wanted money to help somebody or the other, he was always saying, my God, you're just being unreasonable, right, in giving up so much of the wealth for all these people where we also have to support our family. Okay? Today he tells me that all the wealth that you have is a result of all the punya that you have gained from these acts. This is what we call law of karma and law of dharma. Lakshmi, they say, is what? Chanchar. Chanchar means it will come and go. What is the best way to keep Lakshmi? To use it for good causes. Because law of karma will ensure that it will stay with you. The more you try to keep it and grab it, what happens? It will go. The best way is what? Use it for benefit of humankind. You are creating not just the hefty bank account, you are creating hefty what? Karma account, which will bless you and your family for generations. Generations. Okay, so this is what, that change is a very significant change. That shows how evolved the person is. Okay, so this is where this karma yoga has to lead you to this growth, this stature. It's not an ordinary thing. Okay, so this is where karma yoga and sannyasa both are very, very helpful. They have their own place. We can't categorically say that sannyasis are useless and they are just, not doing anything and wasting the resources of the society. That's not what it is. They play a very strategic role. Okay? But karma yogi is equally important because that karma yogi can grow to this extent. From where you are to this is a huge journey. Okay? So that is changing of perspective, being alive to realities, growing as a result, becoming a contributor. It's huge. The potential for growth is huge. Okay? Now, the next topic is Karma Yoga, Sannyasa. The reality is Atma is already free from everything. Then what is the need for meditation? What is the place and what is the role of meditation? Okay, that is explained in the next two verses. Sorry? Yeah, sure. The next two contemplate. Right? So, I will just chant, right? The next two verses talk about meditation. It says, Sparshan krutvan bahir bahyan chakshurshchaivantare bruvoho prana panau samau krutva nasyabhyantara charinau Yatendriyamano buddhihi munirmokshaparayanah vikatechhabhayakrodaha yassada mukta eva saha. Beautiful verses. You will chant after me? Okay. Okay. Sparshan krutvan bahir bahyan Chakshurshchaivantare bhruvoho Pranapanau samau krutva Nasyabhyantaracharinau Yatendriyamano buddhihi Munirmokshaparayanah Vigatechhabhayakrodaha Yassada mukta eva saha. Okay. So now, what is meditation? The whole purpose of meditation is revealed in these verses. Generally, when we think about meditation, what do we think about? What do you think is meditation? Everybody is talking about meditation. What do you think is meditation? What is the...
Concentrating and bringing your mind to one attaining. When you talk about
Okay. Okay. So what she is saying is that concentrating and bringing your mind to what?
Stream.
A stream of thoughts. Okay. That's a good, actually it's good. Yeah. It's one of the important aspects, and then we'll see there is so much more to meditation. But it's good. What else?
when we, like the higher part of it would be that you live your life in a meditative way, something like that also.
Okay.
Or when you
So-
do meditation, you're just trying to bring everything and concentrate on something. That it's a way of life, basically.
Okay.
It's like, it's more, in a way, it's contemplation.
Excellent.
It's contemplation. So you are looking at it like an observer without being engaged. So in some ways, it is not really focus.
It's a flow of
When you are
thoughts.
focused, you are into it. Whereas here you are looking at it, but you are still removed. You can understand that what you are seeing or what is happening is not you.
Because we are watching our thoughts.
Okay.
It's a flow of thoughts.
Okay, flow of thoughts. Okay, so now the vision of Vedanta with reference to meditation is many of these and more. So we will see what, right? The first thing Lord Krishna is talking about is Sparshan Krutvan Bahir Bahyan. Okay, very nice, beautiful. Okay. It says Bahyan Sparshan. Bahyan Sparshan means external things which are sparshan, which touch you. Okay, it says bahir krutva, okay, keeping them outside. So that means the whole world is where outside, right? But where are you carrying it? Inside. All your worries, all your stress, all your every resentment, any baggage that you have is a result of your carrying the external world where? Inside you. Okay, so this is what it says. The first thing in meditation is what? External things, keeping them external. Okay, so that means situations arise in life and you have to deal with it. Even Lord Krishna had to deal with situation. He was not confused about what? Arjuna and his dharma and what? Duryodhana and his lack of dharma. And he told Arjuna to engage in the war because he can't just sit back and say now let it be. That let it be attitude is a very passive attitude. It is not what spirituality is about. Doing what needs to be done is spirituality. Okay, but what happens is, he said, the same war you can engage with two attitudes. One is, oh, they have done so much wrong to me, Okay, they have been so unfair to my whole family. They have humiliated my wife. So all this baggage of resentment, anger, okay, feeling of whatever that getting back, right, getting back to them, taking a revenge, all this is a load from which you take an action. It is like action of any other normal human being. Okay, what is an evolved response to this situation? No, exactly. Exactly. When it comes to you, this is a situation. What is the situation? That Duryodhana, okay, who is unethical, is having a power, an absolute power. And a person who has absolute power, right, what will happen to the subject? And the person is not ethical and not evolved. What will happen to all the subjects which are under him? There will be lot of suffering. Okay, now not everybody is in a position to fight a powerful person, but Arjuna, in the grand scheme of things, where was he placed? He had the skills, he had the capacity, he had everything that was necessary to fight him. Okay, now if he does not perform this duty, and if he lets person in power like Duryodhana go unchallenged, what is the consequence for the whole society? We make these decisions all the time. Okay, all the leaders who have been highly corrupt, what has happened? Over a period of time, there is a rise and people have taken them out. Right? And you have to do it. You can't just say, oh yeah, let everything be. You can't do that. Okay, so therefore doing what needs to be done. So he says there are two ways. One, the action is the same. What is the action? He is fighting. But what is it? What is the attitude? The whole motive behind the action. Either it is done as what? Just the result of all these personal revenge and anger and whatever, all the sadness or whatever, or it is done as what? From a clarity. What is required for me at this given point in time? Okay, so this is how you can deal with everything without this baggage. This baggage is a problem. Situations are not a problem. Okay, so therefore this is what we call sparshan krutvan bahirbahyan. You do what needs to be done in a given situation, and after that what? You don't carry the load. Otherwise what happens is every situation has carried some kind of a load within you, and that load is what? Increasing over a period of time and getting reinforced. Okay, so that means you have to engage, and you have to sometimes take difficult decisions. Okay, but as a result, once our teacher used to say, after every action you do a full stop in your mind. Om Tat Sat. That lingering is, you keep on dwelling into it and you go round and round and round and round. It depletes you of your energy. Okay, it does not make you a fresh person who can analyze things with a clear mind and make proper decision. That lingering and load vitiates every decision making. So sparshan krutvan bahirbahyan means you deal with situations but don't internalize things. Like simple events in life, and how much we internalize, and we suffer from this internalization. Okay, there is a very simple problem that you walked and somebody walked across and you said hi and the person did not respond. What happens? This is a simple event. It's a very insignificant event in some way. What happens as a result?
What was the reason?
Exactly. Right? You keep on thinking, why, what was the reason, did I do something wrong, that person, why is she upset with me? Then you say, oh my god, that person is becoming arrogant, because now she has this, look at her. So imagine such a huge picture you have created based on one simple external stimuli. Next time you meet that person, you are going to be fresh.
No, the same picture.
The same picture. Your interaction with that person is going to be loaded by what? All this big story that you made. Okay, so this is why when situation, if this is something which is bothering you, what is the right thing to do? Just call that person up and say, hey, didn't you hear what happened? Are you fine? Finish it. Instead of entering into your imaginary mode. Your life
Might have something going
to do exactly. The person may not even have seen you, right? And you are creating this huge problem. So this is why every situation there is a way of dealing with it which will free you from all the loads after having dealt with it, or it will increase your load. Sparshan krutvan bahirbahyan is developing this attitude, and that is that right now during meditation, because we are already carrying many things, right? So during meditation you tell yourself that this half an hour or 45 minutes, whatever the time there may be, okay, I'm going to spend with myself, not in relation to different things of the world, but just me, nourishing me.
That's the meditation.
That's the first step. This is the very first step. Then, as you said, contemplation. It is amazing time. This half an hour or 45 minutes can be one of the best times of your life. Self-reflection. Okay, so first by saying I keep the external world external, so that means in this 45 minutes I'm not going to worry about my children, have they gone to school or not, right? What is happening at work? Is this client coming? At house, what is happening? You can close your eyes and your mind can be what? All these are all carried here. You are so-called doing meditation, but what? And then you can say, oh yeah, I'm just watching the thought. No. You say, hey, this is the time I'm not going to engage in just my normal state of being. This is a time which I use very, very deliberately for myself. Okay? Sparshan krutvan bahirbahyan chakshurs chaivantare bruvoho. Okay, certain amount of focus is required, as Nirmala was saying. Okay, normally our mind works at a very superficial level. Okay, we are distracted all the time. Okay, what is the attention span that we have? Very little. You try to read something. Well, most of the time kids now, I have all these young parents and they are always complaining, our kids, right? Everybody's problem is their kids, right? And they said, oh, they are reading, but they are somewhere else. Everybody thinks that their problem is their kids. They don't think exactly. Absolutely. So that actually the problem is really you rather than the kids. That's what I keep telling, right? So, but that is okay. Now what is happening is how much, you decide for 10 minutes I'm going to read it. Forget the kids, you decide. How many times your mind goes on a tangent? Unless you are some thriller which is very engaging. If you have to study book of physics or book of chemistry or book of mathematics, your own mind will go. Right? So therefore, what is it that our mind, how to make it a little bit more engaged? How? Okay, so there is a technique which is given, which is a very important technique. Okay, the technique is, you say for 10 minutes I am going to do japa. Okay? Japa means what is japa? You have a mantra, any mantra. You can have Om Namah Shivaya, you can have Om Namo Narayanaya, Om Ganeshaya Namaha, whichever mantra. If you are another faith, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, you can take any mantra. If you are from other religion, you can take mantra of that religion. It doesn't have to be Hindu.
Like the Buddhists do that.
Exactly, they do their own chanting, right? Yeah, exactly. Whatever it is, it cannot be meaningless sound. It has to be something meaningful. Okay. Now you must listen. Why do you need to do chanting? Why do you need to do japa, meditation for 10 minutes? Okay? It is precisely to make your mind deeper. Because now you're going a whole day, your mind goes from one topic to the other. Okay? Now I'm thinking about Nirmala, then I'm thinking about South India, where I spend so much of my time studying Vedanta. Then I'm thinking about that dosa place which I loved and that I used to go, and that idlis I really miss. I'm hungry now, right? So that means whole day the mind goes from one thought to the other, and it just, now I'm traveling to South India in 1 second, and in that restaurant I'm imagining, right? So that means you're not in the present. Absolutely, right? So now how do I channel the mind in a way that it stays with the present? Okay, so the mantra meditation is a very good thing, because before there was no distraction. Why there was no distraction? Because I had no given any task to the mind. Now during meditation I say, just 1 minute, for 10 minutes I'm going to do this. Then what will happen? You will chant Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, and then, like the mind is used to, it will go and think about what? Kailash. Then Kailash, that next trip my friend went, and the next trip that I want to do. You will start going on a tangent. Before, that was how the thinking was. Now you have given a task to your mind for next 10 minutes, not the whole day. 10 minutes I want to chant Om Namah Shivaya. What do you see? That you want your mind to do one thing, it does what? Something totally different. Even for 10 minutes you have no mastery over your mind. Bhavan, you want to say something?
When we are in this class, certain thoughts come or mind are the things that I need to do.
Exactly.
For me, if I say no, I must focus on this, then that is at the back of my mind, and I remember I have about 10, 15 thoughts in a few minutes. So is it better then, as I do sometimes, to pick up my phone and just put a reminder or send that off in a second, rather than carry on and actually not be focused for a larger period?
Yeah, exactly. Deal with the way that you think is the best way to deal. Yeah, absolutely. If you think that you just by writing it out, at least you get it out of the way so that it doesn't linger on, it's a good thing to do. Absolutely. Or if you can think that, it's not so important and let me now first go on, that choice is yours, right? So that's why Vedanta doesn't tell you that this is what, there is no one way. You just have to deal with your mind, and whatever is comfortable with you, with your disposition, that's what you do. But this is a good way. It's a good way that you get it out with so that it is not interfering. Absolutely. It's amazing because you have so much time, but during this time, all these things come, right? This is how the nature of mind is. It's very true. It's true. We all get, that's why we say that focus is, it's this attention deficit is a big problem.
But if you tell us that you come for 1 hour, like
Yeah.
I just put my phone away.
Yeah.
That 1 hour is
So different people have different ways of dealing it, right? Exactly. That's why I don't want to tell one is better than the other, because exactly, people have different ways.
But still keep thinking something else.
This is what, exactly.
So
I mean, there is
So
a way you can.
you can, and
stop
there are
it.
different ways. There are different ways. So it's good, Baman, you brought it out. It's nice. It's good, right? At least you're proactive about taking care of the mind so that it can stay with the subject matter. It's proactive. That's good. Okay. So now what happens is, before, that is how the mind goes from one topic to the other throughout the day. You didn't even know that it was distracted. Now you have an insight into your own mind, that even for 10 minutes it doesn't do what you want it to do. Even for 10 minutes. You want it to chant Om Namah Shivaya, and it goes and thinks about Mount Kailash, and then the friend, and then this, and then that, right? So what do? You bring gently, without self-condemnation. Oh, I'm no good, I can't even concentrate for 10. This is biggest problem people have. Oh, I can't be quiet for 10. You be kind to yourself. Mind's nature is to move, it will move. Meditation is a practice where you begin to work on yourself in an intelligent manner, so that the mind becomes finer and deeper. Okay? So what do? You bring it back. You bring it back to the chant. This, now imagine, over a period of time, okay, before, within this 10 minutes of Om Namah Shivaya, how many times the mind went here and there? Countless times. It will become less and less and less. Now you are not in meditation, you are in your office and you have to study something. Okay, what is that? The mind that you have developed during meditation, which is able to stay with a given subject, which is Om Namah Shivaya, without being distracted. The same mind is available to you when you are making a decision. The same mind is available to you when you are studying. The same mind. How is the mind? It has undergone a change. Understand? Very slowly but very subtly. It has undergone a discipline, right? It's like a monkey mind. How do you discipline it? Okay, so therefore it is able to stay without being distracted. That is when the mind gains depth. Otherwise, it is in that distraction, when you are not able to focus on anything, you don't think about things deeply. You remain at a superficial level. So not only you are gaining focus, you are also gaining what? Depth. Analytical mind is the one which is not superficially understanding ideas. It's able to stay with ideas, see it from different standpoints and understand it accurately. That requires staying with that given thing, not going away here and there. Okay, so this is the first benefit. It's a huge benefit of meditation, bringing back the mind and making it focused. Now, the whole day you cannot have a mind which is focused, right? Because the mind's nature is to move. Moving nature of the mind is something which is necessary. Please understand. Imagine I'm looking at Nirmala, okay, and my drishti and my thought get stuck with Nirmala. I'll not be able to speak the next word. The mind needs to move. In order for me to do different things, my mind needs to move. Don't condemn the mind for moving. What is the problem is, when you want it to be in a given thing, it moves. That is exactly. Okay. Then for that amount of time, you have to say, hey, you have to what? Stay with this. After that, let it do its natural function. Otherwise, it will become like a Frankenstein trying to control the mind. Okay. When you want it to be there, it has to be engaged. It cannot be distracted. Okay. So this is what we accomplish by mantra. The second very important benefit of mantra is the following. Okay. As I told you in this particular example of somebody passing by, not saying hi to you, and how you build this big story, what happens is our mind builds up stories through associations. Okay, so what is a small event becomes very big in our mind, and lots of our suffering comes from the stories that we have built in the mind as a result of external situation rather than the external situation itself. Okay, so how do you curb the tendency of the mind to build stories, right? So what has happened is there are many thoughts, but one thought related to the other thought, to the other thought, and then it becomes a picture, a coherent picture. Okay, you break this tendency of the mind to build. How do you do it? By repeating the chant, which is what? Om Namah Shivaya. What is the next chant? Om Namah Shivaya. There is no associative thinking, there is no build up. Then what is the third chant? Om Namah Shivaya. What is the fourth chant? Om Namah Shivaya. Right? So that means it prevents your mind from what? Making this story. She didn't look at me. Oh, I have done something wrong. Oh, she's become proud. Oh, she's now like this. This is what we call building up stories through associative thinkings. Mantra meditation breaks this tendency of mind to do thinking by association, because one chant is the same as the other chant. The second chant is the same as the third chant. So that means you become lot more deliberate in your thinking and much less mechanical in your thinking. It's a huge thing. Okay? Mostly when people, it's very interesting, people say, oh, we are depressed. The depression, does it happen as a result of one thought? Said, I'm depressed for 1 year. Then people come and tell me that. Okay? Now 1 year, how many different thoughts they have had in 1 year? Countless thoughts in this 1 year. Countless thoughts. Okay? And each thought is the same? No. Okay? So that means if it was just one thought, oh, I'm feeling no good, and the next minute the thought will change, can you say that you are depressed for 1 year? Because the next thought is different. Oh, what should I eat? Why does it seem that I'm depressed for 1 year? Because, sorry? Excellent. Right? So that means even though the thoughts are changing, there is one chain, one thread, which is what we call series of association, the thoughts through association. With the common thread is I'm depressed. Many different thoughts. It takes many different forms. Okay? But through association, it all just combines together and gives you one picture. Okay? This is what we call the building capacity of your mind. Then you get what? So identified with that picture. Okay? Now you have to, in fact, if one thought of not being good comes, you, instead of trying to resist it, right? Let it be. How long will it last?
And the second one.
Next second it will go. Okay? You don't even have to do anything to get rid of it. The mind is designed in a way, you try to hold on to one thought. It cannot. There is no thought which lasts for even 10 minutes. The mind's nature is to move, it's a blessing. Okay? The associative thinking, the predominant thinking, right? That which means many different thoughts get connected and build one picture, as though this is a continuous. It gives an illusion of continuum, where actually it is not. Okay? So that is what you need to break. Because if you are able to break it, most of the problems will be solved. This whole the burdens that we carry, sadness, anger, all of this is a result of what? This kind of making stories. Making stories, giving them meaning through associative thinkings and identifying with them. Okay? So meditation, mantra is a very effective manner of just, hey, why this is true, but why am I now using the next level? Is it true? Is it real? Or is it my construction? You have to think. You have to ask yourself. You need to challenge yourself. Is my inference right, or am I building up? Okay, so this is why you become much more deliberate in your thinking process. When you become deliberate in your thinking process, you are able to check all these invalid logics that you are applying constantly.
And you can see that you can discipline your mind, because as soon as you see it going well, you can, oh, this is, you can bring it right back.
Exactly.
Are you with that?
Exactly. You can bring it back. You can bring it back. It's like mind goes on a off track and you bring it back on track. So this is what, yes.
Actually, in some ways, when you're writing,
Yes.
or when you're in the middle of, say, sometimes watching a movie,
Yes.
at that time your mind doesn't wander so much. So there, it is possible actually, when you are really engaged with what you're doing, to be totally immersed in that, and then if somebody comes into the room, something you get a bit of a shock because you're so disassociated from where you are. But taking that back and bringing it into a place where you're contemplating the mantra is
Much more. Very good, Anjali. You know, because that is very good. What she's saying is very nice. I want to bring up, right? What she's saying is that that amount of concentration you can even have when you're watching a very engaging movie. Okay, so that means you're totally absorbed. You are not distracted and all that. Okay, so now what is the difference between watching a TV and meditating? Because you are
Outside you're watching something and engaged in something, and here you have to go inside.
excellent, right? So here, by watching for that given moment, you are absorbed. Does it give you any skill, right, to gain that kind of a capacity to engage better when you are not doing that? It is not making you any wiser. It is just for that moment capturing you. In meditation, what happens? There is a carry forward of the benefit of that meditation because it's much more deliberate. Okay? In the other case, you have almost like a numbing process. You numb the mind, right? You become passive. And here, and then you're taking in the inputs which are engaging. Here, it's an active process to help yourself to gain a mind which is deliberate, less mechanical, focused, right? That is what we call gaining mastery over your ways of being. And after that half an hour, the benefits of that are carried forward for rest of the day. It's different. But it's very nice, Anjali. I'm so happy that you brought it out because it seems as though it is similar thing, but actually it's very different. Very good, thanks.
Passive active.
Passive and active.
Is it okay to use different mantras on different meditative days? Like if I'm meditating today, I'll say another mantra. If I'm meditating tomorrow, it's a different mantra, or must you hold on to one mantra?
Generally, you hold on to one mantra, but there is not necessary also. You can have different mantras for different days if you are aware that today is a good, Shiva's day, and today is Devi's day and Hanuman day. There is no problem. There is no problem. Yeah, you can do it. But generally, people keep one mantra. Yeah, they keep one mantra. Yeah, but it's possible. There is nothing wrong in that. And in a way it's good because sometimes even chanting or mantra becomes mechanical. Okay, so here to change the mantra is good also. Somehow the mind remains alert. So it's good. Okay, so therefore this is the second benefit of mantra. The third benefit, it's way past. Okay, so I will talk about meditation in length, right? Because this is not the only. the meditation has many different steps, including contemplation. Okay, and we will go through each one of that. Okay, so we'll end here. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate